Did I hear him singing tenor? I say, you got another tenor singing. We'll have time after I get through the announcements or anything that I need to say. This is a potter's workshop. Now, I can't read that. I was told that's what it is. But everybody knows what a potter is. And it was used in the Bible Who was it that carried it down to the potter's workshop? Anybody remember?
Back then, no how.
Don't anybody know who went down to the potter's workshop? The potter was making some kind of a vessel, and he got almost through with it, and it didn't suit him, and he squished it and put it back on that he made it. Who did that? All right. Is all the Sunday school teachers here? That's y'all Sunday's homework for you teachers. Don't forget to ask if they found it. This is an old cemetery that was on about halfway between Jerusalem and Jericho. It's really, you can't see anything. It's just a sign there, and I made a picture of it. This is and I think I've got some of them coming before those. That's the Dead Sea. That's Clyde. And if you'll notice, there's some swimmers out there, but they're not swimming. They're just floating. And the reason they're floating, you can't sink. Because you can dive down, but you can't sink. You can go out there on top of the water and not sink. It's because there's so much salt in it. There's enough potash. This is the only one that we were told the amount of minerals that's in that thing. Nothing is alive. There's no life in that thing whatsoever. No fish or anything because it's so soft. And there's enough potash in there to last the world for, what did I say, 100 years? And it's many, many different kinds of, that thing's about 50 miles, about 10 miles. If you look, you have to look real close to see it. How many of you, I'm sure all of you remember that Moses was not allowed to see the promised land. This is in this side where he's standing, is the promised land. That's the land of Palestine. But on the other side is not the promised land. If you can see in the right-hand corner, you can see a mountain. Just a vague outline of a mountain. That thing's about 10 miles wide, and it's about 50 miles long, and that is supposed to be where Moses, since he was not allowed to enter into the promised land, he went up, God carried him up on the mountain, and showed him the promised land, and that's supposed to be in that area somewhere there. But it's amazing to me to see those people out there not swimming, but laying up on top of the water. Well, you took a shower when you came out. They had freshwater showers there. Wash the salt off. If I wasn't swimming, if I remember right, I wouldn't do it. I couldn't get my fever complexion messed up.
In other words, the Red Sea and the Dead Sea are one the same.
No. No, that's there's the only water that comes into the Dead Sea is what comes out of the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is fresh water, and the Jordan River actually runs through. It runs through, all the way through the Sea of Galilee. And it goes in one end and it comes out the other end. And it goes on down and empties into the Dead Sea. And it's fresh water going into the Dead Sea, but there's no outlet. So the Jordan River is continually running into the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea never lowers, the water level never lowers and never raises. It always stays the same. It always, we use it as it's always taken and receiving, but never given. So it's just a dead body of water. No, it's not the same as the Dead Sea. That's another picture of it. See that man out there with his knees sticking up, his head sticking up? He's just like me. Right down on the lower end of this, there was some down into the valley where Sodom and Gomorrah was, and there was five, if you remember, there were five of those cities on the lower end of the Dead Sea, and of course they were destroyed when it rained fire and brimstone. And they tell me that they have actually discovered down in the water, under the water, some of the remains of some of those cities there. Now, this is a place that I get scared when I look at it. This thing here is, it's not Megiddo. What am I trying to say? Well, I got to get it and move around. I need somebody to work this thing on this. Where Masada, that is the land of Masada. That is the mountain, and the name of it is Masada. Who remembers what Masada is? What's the story behind Masada? You remember there were I believe there was 1,000, or maybe it was 100. Which was it? Who remembers? I believe it was 100 of the Jews that went up on that mountain, and they made a fortress up there during the reign of the Roman Empire. When the Romans came down, they went up because they were not going to be captured. And so there was 100 of the Jews that went up on top of this mountain. And they agreed that they would never be captured. There was no way up. I mean, it was impossible to go up on the mountain for an army to go up there and capture. And so they agreed that there would be one man that would kill 10. There'd be another man that would kill 10 more if it looked like they were going to be captured. And then the last man living, he would kill himself. And so what the Romans did, they came down. There was no way up, so they started, and I've got a picture of it. I think I've got a slide if it hadn't been messed up. How they actually went off out yonder to a distance, and they actually built a road up to the top of this mountain, and it was 1,400 feet high. 1,400 feet high, and they built a road, and the soldiers went up that road and got on top of the mountain. Of course, when they got on top of the mountain, they found nothing but dead folks. They'd done killed. They carried out the plan that they killed everybody so they wouldn't be captured. Now, you see this black mark here, that is a trench. That's a man-made trench. And when it rained, water would fill up that trench and run into a well, and that's where they got their water when they was on top of the mountain. All right. How long did it take to do that? Well, you figured out. Okay. I don't know. They were there for, I don't think they ever told us. If they did, I forgot. But it was months and months that I do know it, 3 years. It just came back to me. It took them 3 years to get up on top of the mountain. And you can understand why in just a minute. Now this was a drain. All right. Now, this was a wall that was built around it. What this was a place of worship. That window was looking to the what we would be our east. It was looking toward the east. And they had an inner wall and an outer wall, and you just walked around through that. And that doesn't show it. But they would show rocks about that big around. How many of you know what a catapult is? Am I saying it right? Slingshot. That they used to throw at those soldiers. The man with the t-shirt on there, he was the man who went over there. All right. No. This is the outer wall they had built around that thing. This here, no, this is what was, is more or less the inner wall. This is the outer wall that went around. This is where they had those slingshot, big old caterpillars in there. And these were some of the wheels that they were fastened on. You see, there's one on top of this, one on top. See the holes in them? That's where the axles went in. And there was 4 wheels to each one, and they were tremendous things. And they threw rocks that big around and down on those shoulders. All right. This goes to the bathhouse. This is a steam bath. Who would have ever thought back during the time of Nero, the Roman emperor, that they would have steam baths? That's up on top of this mountain. And you wouldn't believe how it operates. It's a solar-operated steam house. All right, that is a floor. And that's about the way it looked when I made the picture. So it's the slide is still good. But go ahead and I made several. This is a part of the wall that was in there. And I'm afraid that what I want to show you is missing. Go ahead. There it is. It's not missing. You see these little stone pillars? They were about that tall. And they were all in there. And during the daytime, when the sun was shining, the sun, they had a thing where the sun would come in and warm these little stone pillars. You know how they got the steam? They turned pour water in there on that. And that would steam up, and that's where they took the steam bath. It was unbelievable to think that they even knew what a steam bath was back then, but that's what it is. This is inside, looking out that window that you saw a while ago. The Northern Palace Villa up at Terrace. How many of you know what that's talking about? The Northern Palace Villa Upper Terrace. All right, it was more or less the top of where the old king or the old emperor stayed. Now, if you walked this way, there was a cave down under that you couldn't get to when I was there, but you could see the cave if you were down on the ground, you could see it. But when this was in use, he could actually go, and there were steps that led down to go into his private palace, and that's the top of it. All right, that's just some of the rooms that was there on top of the mountain. You're 1,400 feet high now, and this is where they lived. They had their own, as you notice, they had their own steam bath, they had their own water cisterns, they had their own drain, and they had everything, and they could just stay right there. And that's some of the rooms that they stayed in. This is just a fence that kept me from falling off. You see this right here? How many of you know? Well, here's one here. Here's a big one here. And this is one on the inner side. How many of you know what a garrison is? Well, it's not a fort. It's an army of men. It's a certain number of men, what it is, that was camped out. This is what would be called a garrison. And this is where the Roman soldiers were garrisoned. This is where they were camped out. Of course, I'm looking down, that's 1,400 feet. And this is when I really found out that I was scared of heights. I got up on that thing, and y'all wouldn't believe how frightened I was. I was scared to death because I didn't know how I was going to get back down. And I didn't want to go close enough for fear of falling off, and I even thought, how in the world can I get a helicopter to come up here and get me off this rattling mountain? I was literally scared to death because here I am about 1,400 feet with no way to get out. And the thing about it, you had to walk. There was about 100 steps that you had to walk, that you actually had to come off of the top of the mountain and walk around that to catch the elevator. This one of these sky lifts is how they carried you up there. But it lacked about, I don't know, 50 feet or more. It didn't carry you all the way to the top. It would only carry you part of the way. Then you had to get out of that sky lift and walk up these steps that's on the outside of the mountain looking down about 1,400 feet. And you're right. You know how, when I got up there and got out of the sky lift and started walking up, you know how I made it to the top? I crawled on my hands and knees next to the inside, and I ain't never prayed so hard in my life. Lord, don't let me. Huh?
Was Clyde laughing?
If Cruising on, he was probably frightened too. This is a part of that road. Now that looked like a short distance. But they went out here and they began to pile up dirt and they built roads and they built that road all the way to the top of that mountain, and that's how they got up there. Folks, that's just a little trail going on.
I know there was something, but what did they eat?
They had their own corn and they had the grain and they had the water. And they had, I'm sure they had some goats or whatever. I don't know, but they had. They didn't go up there to stay a long time. They knew that they wouldn't be there very long. But they said they would not be captured, and they went up there to hold out as long as they could hold out. Oh, it's been in the news. I saw it here not too long ago. It was on TV. They was had made some pictures of it. All right. All right, that's what does it say? I think it's a cistern. I think that's what that says. I'm not sure. But it holds water. That's just some more of the wall. Yeah, here's some of those pillars. I thought at first when I first looked at it, I thought it was stones that they threw it Roman soldiers, but it's not.
Did it rain much over there?
I don't remember it raining a day. I was there in December. I don't remember it raining a day. Now here's a trail that's leading up to that road that's built to go up on top of the mountain. That's just another picture.
So it was hot there. It was hot when you were there. Because people were swimming around there.
Yeah, it wasn't hot, but it was just a good temperature. Now there's some of the stones. And those things were about that big around. Solid stone, and that's what they put on those catapults or those slingshots. And they'd draw that thing back, cut the rope, and they'd sling that rock out on those Roman soldiers. Well, that's some of them piled up there. This is tile. We go back to the bathhouse. That's ceramic tile. I know all of you know what ceramic tile is. You got it, maybe some of it in the bathroom, in the kitchen, on the train boards and what have you. So tile's been here a long time. This is a wall looking through that window that you saw a while ago, and that's gravel rock and cement. Yeah, that's there. It's handmade. It's hand built. This is the tower in the little chapel. They had their own little church there, and that's a part of the wall. You see, they didn't make it all. See, this is not like that. Not exactly, and this is not like that. But it's all handmade, and what that is gravel rock and some kind of cement that they built it. That's the window again. All right, now you're seeing it at a distance. Now you know what I've done, don't you? I've already been up there, and I'm making my way back to the side of it. I'm headed toward the side of that thing to come back down. That's another. That's one that's out of place. Let me see if I can get back there. I want to say something about that. Is that it? Well, that's not what I was thinking about. That's that same window. What I thought I had seen there at first, we go back to the Caesarea of the Sea where Paul was a prisoner for 2 years. And we went in there and saw the moat, and one there was a tower there, sort of like that, and it had a slit window like these windows here. It was along up and down like this. And the reason they built it that way is because they could shoot their bow and arrows through it. How many of you know what that is? This is the concrete road here. Right over in here is the original Jericho Road. It comes from Jerusalem down to Jericho. And this is the blacktop road that we were on, and the reason it doesn't look too good is because I made it out the window of the bus. We were riding the bus. There's some more of it, and these are camels that doesn't seem to belong to anybody. There's a story, and I doubt that the films are still good, but they eat camels there. And of course, they had no refrigeration at all. And what they would do, they would kill that camel, carry it to the city of Jerusalem, and those little old streets was just about, some of them wasn't much wider than this aisle that goes down here. And they had their little, what do you call, little hole in the wall, enclave. Is that what that's the proper name for? They had their store built back in the wall here, and they'd hook a rope to that old camel, and they'd skin him and have him dressed, everything except cut up. And they'd just pull him up, and the ladies, when they went to market, they bought enough food for this meal, or they bought enough food for this day. And they didn't stock up for a week like most people do today, and they'd go down to the old butcher shop and they'd say, I want to cut me off that piece of meat. And he'd just reach up there, and I saw him hanging there, and so this is not hearsay. There'd be green flies all over that thing. And he'd just reach up there with that old big knife, and he'd slice off what that woman wanted and wrap it up, and she'd take it and head on down to buy her something to go with it. But that's what they would do. They raised camels, a lot of them, for food. This is back in the city, and the only thing that I can tell you about this, that every time one of the big shots like David or Abraham or Isaac, the patriarchs, or somebody that was really important that we find in the Bible, when they died, of course, they buried them. They buried them mostly in caves and what have you. And so, since that time, they have built a chapel, or they built a building. This, we would call it a church, over every one of those graves. And down in there, down under these buildings, is where Abraham and a lot of those old patriarchs of the Bible, they are buried. And David is buried there, and their tombs have not been entered. They haven't been gone into since the Old Testament, since they were put there. Well, that's the way, that was their dress code. They didn't show their face. They didn't walk around half naked like American women do. They covered themselves because that was their they're supposed to do it. Same thing. Those what would you call those kind of people? Or they're not Oriental, are they? Same principle, same idea. I don't know what that is. No, that's not. That's a part of that same. That's a part of that same building that we just saw a moment ago. That's just some people there, I guess. What I was doing, my camera would not make the picture much of the whole thing, so I'd get half, and then I'd make another. So that's part of the same building. I was just trying to give somebody some idea of how the buildings work. We're going entering in. This guy here is one I borrowed a picture for. We're entering into the narrow street. Now this is a street here we were talking about. Huh? What building? This is the building, yeah. This is more or less a street that we were entering into. Now you can see here part of the building, but it'll clear for us as we go on, I think. Can you focus that a little better? Okay. The cave of Macphaliah. What is that? Wasn't that where Abraham was buried? Dear Bishop, and I can't read it. That is a Israeli soldier. He's about 17 years old. Oh, by the way, while I mentioned that, when those Israeli boys and girls finished school, they spent 3 years in service. They didn't have a choice. They automatically went out of high school into service. The girls and the boys both. And the best thing that could ever happen, if America would do that, and the Army be as it were when I was serving, it'd do one or two things. It'd either make a man out of you, or it'd make a bum out of you. One of those. But if we had that kind of law, where our young men and young ladies would spend 3 years in the service, it'd be the best thing that this country could ever do, I think, after they come out of high school. Turn it back. This, you have to press down on that thing. What you're doing it with, you press it all the way down, and then move it back. Is that what you're talking about? That's made out of the window of the bus. You see that camera?
No, I'm not talking about
You're talking about him.
Yeah.
It's the building. I'm not sure what that is. But the building where what am I trying to say, that was found in the cave? Y'all don't mess me. What was it that they found in these caves? Huh? It was the Bible. It was the Dead Sea Scrolls is what I'm trying to remember. The Dead Sea Scrolls, especially the book of Isaiah, is complete, and it's in a building like this. I don't think that's the building, but I'll tell you why it's domed like that. If we still got pictures, I'll tell you now in case we don't. That they built the buildings that these things are kept in. They built it exactly like the clay jugs that they found it in. And that's how the clay jug had a top on with a dome. And so they built the building in the style of those jugs. They were about like that, maybe a little bigger. And they were about that big around and had a dome on it. So they built it that way. All right, go ahead. This is just a building of some a picture of some olive trees in some of the old town of Jerusalem. This is a Islam prayer Tower. They go up there in the Holland Stream town like a lost soul. All right, go ahead. Let you go. And let you go. Question for you. See this building here? That's a day room. Many of them slept up on top of those buildings. So they had it fixed there with seats and their beds and their chairs and what have you. And a lot of them spent a lot of time. If you remember, I said that's where David was when he saw Bathsheba for the first time. All right, go ahead. That's just some olive trees. Here is some. They're fir tree. They're not cedar trees, but they're fir trees. That's just some countryside scenery. That's a picture of the Judean hills that you see in the background. This is Kedron, the lower end of Kedron. Jerusalem's up on that side. Mount of Olives is back on this side. And what would you think that would be? Right in here. See how level it is. See this view. Well, the garbage dump was in there, but it was on up there. That's where Judas Iscariot hung himself. And right up here, where I'm standing and made that picture, down up here, they've got a building built that portrays the furnaces in Germany, where all the Jews were burned. They carried them down. I don't remember now what they call them, but that's where that building is located on that road just past that. You can see it. I tried to make it zoomed in a little bit and tried to get a little better picture, but that, right in there is where Judas Iscariot hung himself, committed suicide. There again is the lower end of the brook. Across here is where Judas committed suicide. I didn't know if these things were making in it, so I wanted to make sure that I had a picture of it. These are the gardens called the Jerusalem Garden National Park and what have you. They would not let us, it was happened to be some kind of a holiday, and they would not let us go in the building. But this is that building where all of those people. Well, it's not the building, but it's the replica of the building where they were burned in Germany. They come in and build it as a memory. May God, the Jewish people and all mankind remember our sacred martyrs tortured and exterminated by the Germans during the Nazi regime at Bergen, Belsen, and all the other concentration camps. So what they did, they just went there and built this building, and only, I'm told, this is what our guide said because we were not allowed to go in it on that day. But I'm told that that building on the inside looked exactly like the building looked in Germany, where they carried them down to the ovens and they just take them and pitch them in there and burn them. And they came and built that as a reminder. That's the same thing. I had to make two pictures of it. King David's tomb. And notice they got hours when it's open when you could go in there. And it just happened to be that I was there when you couldn't go in. This is a part of the Mediterranean Sea that you see in the background. Olive trees, and back to my left, I'm hoping the picture is still good. This is where Peter had his experience. We turn it on, we'll probably wind up there. That's the Mediterranean Sea. This is a factory that made American-looking equipment, farm equipment, tractors, combines, and what have you. But that there again, that's overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. Mediterranean Sea with that's part of the dock where the ships would come in and dock. This is a, y'all don't mind if I sit down here. This is a chapel built over a grave. And y'all know how well I sing, don't you? This, you could go in that. Give us another picture there and see if it shows the bottom of it. I believe it's gone. Yeah, it's gone. But you could go in there, and we tried it. One person could sing, or two persons could sing, and it sounded like a choir. And what we did, the group that I was with, we all sang a song, and it sounded like 1,000 people singing, and every one of them was in tune. I mean, you ought to heard the harmony. That was the acoustics. That showed me, and as nothing ever has before, the importance of acoustics in a church if you're going to sing, or anything. We've got good acoustics in this church. But you have been where it would just ring and ring and ring. Well, all that has to do with the acoustics. I never did figure out what this guy was doing. But I didn't know. How many of you know what a eucalyptus tree is? What he had done, he'd gone out and he had a mixer there. What he had done, he'd gone out and got us a whole bundle of eucalyptus leaves, and he'd put a handful of those leaves in that mixer. He'd pour a little water in there, and he'd turn it on, and it would turn out green, a green, thick liquid, and they'd drink that stuff. So I don't know if he was getting drunk or fixing to get drunk or commit suicide or what. I didn't have nerve enough to ask him to let me taste it. Might have been some medicine. I think that's the tomb of Lazarus. I'm not sure. That's Clyde. They're looking out over the Mediterranean Sea. And the old gray-haired fellow. Uh-oh.
How old was you?
When did I go over that? 70 what? 79? Huh? 74? How old was that boy? Don't do it so fast when it's on me. Huh? I don't know how old I was. I was good looking, wasn't I? That is just that's some great writing on one of the pillows back where Paul was a prisoner. So I've got it out of place. But that's what it is. We're going down to where Peter had his experience now. So that's just another chapel building that was built over. Everywhere you see a building like that, you know that there's some cemetery under it. There's some graves that's under it. All right, that's the same building that you just saw. Ain't been into that building that came out.
What kind of food?
I'm looking for a towel with a red top. Do y'all see it?
Very back.
Oh, there it is, right there. All right. Who knows who Peter was staying with? He's in the town now where he had. You remember what happened about the sheep being let down from heaven, and all manner of creeping and crawling things was in it. And God had told him to kill and eat, and he says, "No, I won't eat anything unclean." And so the boy said, "What God is, what He calls clean, what He calls clean, don't you call it dirty, or don't you call it unclean?" I can't quote it verbatim. What was that for? Why did he have that experience and that kind of experience? Well, who in Pacific? Huh? Cornelius? Cornelius was a man of God, but he wasn't saved. He was a religious man, but he wasn't saved. So what God wanted Peter to do was go over and explain it to him. Peter says, I ain't going because it's a Gentile. And this is when he had the experience of the what he thought was dirty snakes and what have you that was lowered down, and he came down in the sheep, came 3 times. All right, go ahead. Well, that building is right in there where that was. Now, this is the house of Simon. I was going to ask you that. Simon the tanner. That's not Simon Peter, but it was Simon the tanner that Peter was